welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, I have a Q&A episode for you. I know I've been promising a Q&A episode for a while, but today I went through my inbox and excavated all of your wonderful questions, and I do think that this one delivers, or you guys delivered. So thank you as always for sending those to me. The easiest way to get me is via email. It's my name, Sarah with an H, .hart.unger@gmail.com. You can also get me by leaving a comment on one of my blog posts. My website is theshoebox.com, or there is a phone number where you can text me, and I'll leave that number in the show notes, and you can reach me there as well. Oh, and I've learned how to check my Spotify comments. So if you do happen to listen to this podcast via Spotify, and I know about 10% of you do, then you can feel free to leave a comment or a question right in the app. I can't promise that I'll see it right away, but I have learned to check that every so often and have been delighted to find comments from you guys there. All right, so our first question comes from a listener named Anne. I'm going to read her question. And by the way, today's episode might be a little more off the cuff than usual. I feel like typically I tend to write out my responses to the listeners before I record the episode, and then I paste my answer into the show notes. But today I decided to just go a little bit rogue, and I'm going to read the questions on the air and give you my answer. So I'm hoping it just sounds a little bit more fresh and not rehearsed, but you'll have to let me know which is better or if you don't notice a difference. All right, so this question, as I said, comes from listener Anne. She writes, I've been reading your book and really love the nested goals method. I'm starting to apply it in my personal life and finding it helpful. I'm curious how you would recommend adapting the method for professional knowledge work. I'm a project manager for a healthcare system, so I have an annual plan, various projects that span months, and ongoing operational responsibilities that arise unpredictably. Do you suggest using nested goals in the same way for work, or are there specific tweaks you'd recommend when you don't have full control over your priorities and timeline? For example, how would you approach aligning annual, monthly, weekly, and daily planning in a role that requires both long-term project focus and short-term responsiveness? Also, would you recommend keeping completely separate nested goal systems for personal and professional life or integrating them? Oh my gosh, I think this is such a great question. And I actually will say my hot take is that the nested goals method absolutely works equally well for work and for home. And I would argue that in both spheres, you likely have both long-term projects and unpredictable things that come up that may sidetrack your projects or just change your priorities for a given day. I don't think that's necessarily different on the work front versus the home front. I would say the only kind of separate type of work would be something like my clinical practice, where things are very much, kind of like do them as they come and not really a lot of long-term stuff going on. That might not require such a robust goal-setting system, but I think in most knowledge work positions, you're going to need something like the nested goals system. And I would argue again that it works exactly the same as you were talking about writing a book or publishing a report or putting together some meeting or whatever you're doing for work, writing a research paper, as it would for larger projects in your personal or home life. And just like in your personal or home life, remember that you are always integrating what is coming up and the urgent and like what's happening on a given day with the goal setting that you did on higher levels. I do, however, think that it might be helpful to separate the goal setting systems, especially if you do not want your home or personal goal setting to be dominated by work stuff. And I think for some people, they would kind of resent, let's say they decided to do an annual goal setting session with their partner and you've gone to the beach and you want to think about what you want for your family and your home life and your personal life. You may not want to dedicate those hours that you've taken off from work and therefore are not being compensated by work, spending thinking about your work projects. So I do think it would be reasonable for many people to go ahead and separate the actual goal setting sessions. So maybe you're going to do one big annual planning session for work. And honestly, some workplaces actually do have this built in where you'll do some kind of strategic planning as a group, or you'll have to submit goals for the year. But then every season at work, you're going to look at those goals and think about what you want to tackle each season. Maybe each month at work, you're going to be looking at your workflow, thinking about, oh, these are the big things I have coming up ahead. Look at your seasonal goals and decide what's on your plate for the month. And then each week, you're looking at your calendar, which meetings are already there, and then going ahead and scheduling what extras based on what you have on your monthly list. So I think they work equally well, but they don't exist in a vacuum. So having a really busy work week can impact what you choose to take on personally. So I think my separation would stop somewhere around the weekly level, meaning when you're planning your week, I think you should look at your monthly personal list and your monthly work list to think about what you want to tackle on a given week. Otherwise, you might run the risk of maybe adding too many home or personal tasks during a super busy work week or vice versa. I hope this helps. And actually, I think on a fairly recent episode, I had someone write in about not underestimating the power of nested goals in the corporate setting. And so if I can figure out which episode that is, I will link to that as well. Thank you so much for this interesting question, Anne. All right, our second question comes from Megan, and I get this one every so often, and it's such a great one. All right, I'll read the question. She writes, I would love to know how you actually schedule your planning sessions. I know it's essential for my own peace of mind, but I find I will put planning sessions into my calendar, but they constantly get pushed for other things because it can happen at any time. And I think Laura Vanderkam or maybe Gretchen Rubin said something like, things that can happen at any time happen at no time, meaning you can easily push forward things that seem like, yeah, I can do that whenever, then they don't actually make it onto your calendar at all. So then she writes, I've already blown through my winter seasonal planning session I scheduled because other life tasks got in the way, so I feel behind and then am missing details. Another example is weekly planning. After I read Laura's Tranquility by Tuesday book, I have been trying to use Friday afternoon for my weekly planning, but it seems like every week I get to Friday afternoon and am feeling crunched for all the other work or home tasks that need to get done before the weekends or before my kids come home, and chaos seems to ensue. Friday is her telework day. She says she doesn't have the house things, she needs to get things done so the house things aren't silently screaming at her, but she feels time crunched to finish things at the office. And then finally, she notes that she has a similar issue with time blocking. She says, I will block my time and account for everything, but then things take longer than the block she has assigned, so she keeps going or something comes up, and then she gets behind. Okay, so I have two thoughts. Number one, I absolutely think you should go ahead and think through and or schedule these sessions. But then the second thought is that you definitely want to make sure you're not trying to be perfect at the expense of the good. Meaning, maybe every month you don't have time to sit there for 3 hours and go through every single one of the checklist items that I suggest might be a possible aspect of planning that I talk about in my book, Best Laid Plans, A Simple System for Living a Life That You Love. Maybe you're just like, I only have 20 minutes where I can actually look ahead and see what I have happening this month and just do a brief thought through what my priorities might be. Doing that is probably getting you 80% of the way there, or maybe even 60 or 70% of the way there, and it's worth doing even if you can't do things in the way that you kind of envision them. So for me, I also struggle with planning on Fridays, and I tend to do it more, either some of it on a Wednesday. I kind of start my weekly planning, and then I finish it over the weekend, and I make sure that we have some downtime kind of available. Now, if we're traveling or there absolutely isn't time, you can also skip a week. The nested goal system absolutely works if you do it, most weeks or most months or even most seasons. The best part is that you can pick up where you left off. But at the same time, I absolutely do encourage you, especially when we're thinking about seasonal planning or annual planning, these big levels that are going to move the needle on things over the coming months. I recommend for those that you're really serious about blocking off time. And annually, I think you should even make sure that it's like time protected from childcare, time off of work. And if you're booking like a weekend getaway with your partner, or even a day on the calendar where you're like, I'm checking into a hotel for one night, this is for me. The bigger you make it and the more kind of an event, the less likely it is to get pushed aside versus, between 3 and 6, after I'm done all the household chores, I'll sit down and plan. Like you might, but you probably won't. That's the kind of thing that gets squashed. But if you turn it into a big event and make sure all the other stakeholders are aware, you're more likely to get it done. This is not me pushing Best Laid Plans live, but this is why people literally fly across the country to have that protected time to plan alongside other planners and with a guide. So that's the sort of extreme option, and it's tons of fun. But I would recommend, if you're really struggling to put it in, make some version of that for yourself that really feels like enough of an event that it won't just get pushed aside. Of course, you can't do that on a daily basis. So for the kind of really small time horizons, like each day, I would recommend building that in as sort of a routine wherever it fits the best, whether it's once you get to your desk at work, once you're waking up and sipping your coffee. Or for some people, honestly, it fits better before lunch or at the end of the day. So you have to kind of ask yourself, where can this fit in as something that I'm just going to revisit as part of my everyday tasks, as automatic as eating lunch or brushing my teeth? All right, so hopefully that helps. But the concise version is A, you should plan it in, and B, make it an event for the larger levels and it's more likely to happen. And C, you don't need to be a perfectionist about it for these methods to really work for you. Even if you can do them somewhat, it's going to be a million times better than not doing them at all. All right, we're going to take a quick break and I'll be back with some more fantastic questions from you guys. Today's episode is sponsored in part by IXL. It's that time of year again. Kids are busy with many spring activities, and yet there's also a big academic push in many places too. Whether you're a homeschooling parent or you want to provide some extra learning support for your child, IXL is a great tool, and spring is a wonderful time to try it out. My kids are using IXL and have been for years to learn and reinforce concepts, and IXL can be used as enrichment, review, or part of a homeschool curriculum. Everything is organized by grade and subject, so you can quickly find what each child needs without juggling multiple resources. The interactive practice and clear explanations and feedback make it easy to reinforce learning as you prepare for end-of-year tests or assessments or milestones. So make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Mint Mobile. I don't know about you, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping lots of money too. One of my close family members recently told me about how much she started saving once she switched to Mint Mobile. The price difference is huge, and the difference in service for her has been undetectable. You too can get the financial benefit of switching today. At Mint Mobile, phone plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can bring your own phone and number and start saving immediately. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/BLP. That's mintmobile.com/BLP. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month, 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. If you're looking for a meal kit that truly offers healthy meals, including organic produce and responsibly sourced proteins and seafood, Green Chef is for you. You can trust every bite with over 40 clean, customizable weekly recipes designed to give you peace of mind. I love how many options they offer to help you align your dinners with your wellness goals. You can choose high protein, high fiber, plant-based, and more. And we've been super happy with the flavors and ease of preparation. They're family-friendly too. My kids get excited when we have a Green Chef dinner coming up because they know it will be something delicious. We especially love the Mediterranean and family-friendly options. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid, that's 50bestlaid, to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50bestlaid at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. All right, I am back, and this next question comes from Liz. She writes, this idea is very inspired by current events and also sort of planning adjacent. I'd love to hear about how to plan and organize related to volunteering, community organizing type stuff. She says she's a mom of 3 in the Minneapolis suburbs and wants to be more involved in her community and volunteering, trying to make a difference. She said she's very overwhelmed with all of the options and avenues, and she's trying to make this fit into her busy schedule and trying to understand how she can make the most difference with the resources that she has. So, really interesting question, and I can't say that I am an expert specifically on political activism. However, I do think this is a goal that can be handled just like any other goal in terms of thinking about where various things fit into your life and also making sure, and I guess this is a little bit of a planning adjacent digression, but making sure you're not doing what I would call kind of like false activism, which is when you are spending lots of times ranting into an echo chamber about things, maybe sharing links with friends who all kind of already believe what you believe and feeling like because you're thinking about these things and talking about them that you're doing something tangible. Now, of course, using platforms to stand up for various causes is a little bit different than that. But I think it's great that you mentioned trying to make a difference and mentioned your specific community, because I think a lot of people kind of confuse kind of like big, large scale moves with the little things that we can do just in our very own neighborhoods that can make a difference. So just like with anything else, I would look in your calendar and see what kind of time you have available to help with this sort of thing. I might ask friends if anybody is already participating in any efforts that align with the causes that you care about. I would make sure that anything that you commit to is something that truly fits into everything else you have going on. And then I wouldn't forget the power of giving money if you're in a stage of life where money is not as scarce as time is, because sometimes providing funds to organizations that are going to fight for the causes that you care about can actually be the most efficient way to give back. Because if you're in a well-compensated field and can do more work and then are donating that might make actually more of a difference than your actual physical time being donated. So all things to think about. I would love to hear from a listener who has successfully built in more community engagement or activism into their life and how they made that work within the confines of a busy schedule. But I would try to plan it in just like anything else. Oh, and I would consider making it a domain when you are planning. So we talk a lot about, like, for seasonal goals, deciding, okay, I'm going to have a personal domain and I'm going to have a health domain, or whatever you want to make sure you're really not leaving out. Perhaps as you're doing seasonal planning or even monthly planning, you make a domain called community and you encourage yourself to choose 3 things. Maybe they're really small things. Maybe they're all donations, or maybe they're all just kind of like one-off events, but you're going to choose a few things to put into that category and then give things a try. You can figure out what fits and what sticks and what doesn't really work for you. But I would encourage to just name that domain, since it's something you want to have more of. It's something you want to bring to life and be more salient for you. And so hopefully that can make it work. All right, our next question comes from Tracy. Okay. I'm going to summarize this because she talked a lot, and this is a great question. But just to give us some context, Tracy is a mid-40s, recently married stepmom of some teens and some cats, and she works in academia. And her expectation is that her Outlook calendar is up to date. And her partner works somewhere else, and he has a Google Calendar, and they want to be able to share and sync these 2 calendars together in a reliable way. And yet, it can be very frustrating for her because, as I have now researched, syncing your Outlook into Google is not as straightforward as you think. You can kind of do a snapshot, but it does not kind of update as changes are made right away. And that can be problematic if you always need to be looking at something current. She had been doing this manually by using Google Calendar and just updating it with the events in Outlook by hand, but that's just gotten really ornery for her. So this is not an area where I am particularly an expert, but I did go to the internet for some answers, and I am turning to you, dear listeners, to see if you have some wisdom for Tracy. If you have Outlook and Google and you want to be able to see your Outlook stuff in real time via Google, then what are you doing to make this happen? From what I'm reading, just adding the feed, again, will kind of give you a snapshot of the ICS that's in your calendar, but it won't update from moment to moment. And the solutions that I found that seemed the most repeated, at least on the internet, were to use a third party that syncs everything up. A couple that I came across include onecal.io. That's, I guess, for an iPhone app. And then there's also another app called Calendar Bridge, which actually has a whole article on how to 2-way sync Google Calendar with Outlook. Now, of course, these are paid services, and I'm just going to add again, planning adjacent rant that, oh my gosh, we are in this bad place with tech right now where we need apps to solve problems that other apps are causing, and you have to pay for that, and that's not good. I feel like in this day and age when tech is supposed to be theoretically solving lots of our problems, this is an example of how that is just not so straightforward. And Tracy, I am so sorry that you're having to deal with this. And it makes me cling to my paper even tighter because syncing that is as easy as picking up a pen. Okay, I trivialize it. It can be hard, actually, because you're having to cross-reference and make sure things are up to date on a regular basis. But I do love paper for this reason. I don't have to pay for a third-party app to get my paper to talk to my paper. All right, next question. But seriously, if you have tips for Tracy, please let me know, and then I can share them on a future episode. I also wonder if syncing both of those to your iPhone calendar might actually be putting them both somewhere else, or an app like Fantastical. something like that might be another option. But again, I have not done it myself, and I would love to hear from people that do it on a regular basis. All right, next I have a note from Stephanie, and this is not really a question, but it is a little mini embedded listener planner review. Okay, so Stephanie wrote that she had been enjoying my book. I actually kind of know Stephanie professionally a little bit, so that was super fun to hear. And she asked if I had done a review of Ramona and Ruth planners. She said she's using the daily overview planner and then a quarterly planner. There's also a quarterly planner option, and it's bringing her some planner peace. So I had not heard of Ramona and Ruth. So of course I hightailed it on over there to their website. And I have to say, listen, a lot of people tell me about various planners and different companies, and sometimes I'm more excited than others. This one got me going. I took one look at this and I'm like, oh, this is a much more sort of feminine and maybe a little bit more flexible version to me of the Full Focus Planner. And I also love the Full Focus Planner, don't get me wrong, but I love this alternative, and I feel like it has some of the elements of FFP without having all of them. Stephanie writes, this is that she feels it's a much more beautiful and feminine planner than Full Focus, and she likes the inclusion of small spaces for logging things like self-care, nourishment, and the best part of the day. She notes that she does a combination of digital planning. She uses the Bright method, which she learned from Kelly Nolan, who I had on many years ago and who is still a good friend of mine. And she also uses a written planner, but has struggled to find a daily planner that is minimalist enough to go along with her digital planning. She said she tried the Full Focus Minimalist for a few months and liked that somewhat, but really enjoyed writing in this one more. Also, a big difference with this one is the ability to skip pages and days entirely. Like when she has busy clinical days, she doesn't need to do much planning. I totally get that. She's able to just skip the days. So that is the Ruth and Ramona planner. I've never actually touched one in real life, but upon browsing the website, I can definitely see how this could be a very exciting option. Sorry, Ramona and Ruth, not Ruth and Ramona. An option for some people. And if you're on Full Focus but have really been frustrated about not being able to easily skip pages, you might want to give this planner a try or a look. All right, our last question comes from Jennifer. She actually sent me a couple, but I'm going to give you the last one. She said, you made a comment about tracking your moods. How do you track this? Do you have a numeric rating scale? A consistent set of adjectives that you apply in order to see trends? I have tried it over the years to track my energy and moods, but I find my methods are inconsistent and subjective. So mine are a bit subjective. I'm not sure. They are fairly inconsistent as well. However, I tend to track them on the annual pages of the Hobonichi. So there's a spread in the beginning of the planner where there's literally like little 10 boxes there for each day. And I've shared how I use mine as a health log for the family. I actually have a column for myself, my husband, my kids. It's kind of fun to watch how a cold kind of like circulated around the entire family over the course of like a 3-week period, because I put little green dots when a kid was all snotty and you could see the green dots travel around. And the best part was that I am the only one who didn't get it. Maybe I'm jinxing myself, but it's been a little time now. I think the pattern's over. Anyway, on that same spread under my name, I track when my periods are, and I have just been noting if I have any moods that go along with that. Like, so I noticed that I was kind of ragey during the mid-cycle period in January. So I just put a little star, and at the bottom, I put code mid-cycle rage. So if I had a really down day, or I just had a day that was out of the normal, I would make a little note, like a coded note on that spread. And for me, that's enough. It's absolutely subjective, but I'll say, my everyday moods, thankfully, are pretty decent. So I really don't note, oh, today was a good day. Today was a good day. I note when I'm struggling, which again, for me, tend to follow different kind of hormonal swings in my cycle, but might happen randomly. And if they happen randomly, I would put a little star or a black dot or something like that. And I'd put equals mood. And then I could be able to see how often those moods are occurring, whether they do in fact line up with hormonal cycles or they're just random. And I feel like mood and health kind of go hand in hand. So I kind of like them in that same place. However, I also, and this is also entirely subjective, I've been using my Hobonichi weeks this year to track fitness and steps and all kinds of stuff like that, sleep. And on the right-hand side of the page, I'm not really using that grid unless I have like a major mood thing, and then I'll just make a note. Now, that's also entirely subjective, but I just kind of like having a place where I can vent to if I'm not feeling my best. And between putting those two things together, I feel like I have enough sense of pattern. That said, I've seen people do super, super cool things with that. For example, some people will color code and they'll use that annual tracker in Hobonichi, but maybe like red is like a really low mood and like purple is a really good mood. And then the colors of the rainbow go throughout. And then every day they pick a color and then you can kind of follow their mood throughout the days. I do not do that. That seems for me a little too much, but for some people, they absolutely love it. And so if that appeals to you, I would suggest giving that a try. Of course, you could do a digital version of that as well. Just setting up like a little tab calendar sheet in Google Sheets and choosing a color or an adjective for each day. All right. Well, this has been a really fun Q&A episode, made extra fun by you guys. These were just such great questions, so thank you for sending them. If you've made it to the end of the episode, you get to find out that this week should be the week. I'm trying to think if that's correct. Yes, it should be correct. This airs on Monday the 2nd, and by Wednesday the 4th, I'm hoping to get my newsletter out that includes links to register for Best Laid Plans Live. Now, we are releasing this to prior alumni of Best Laid Plans Live first. So I guess there's a chance we could get to this point and not have any slots left. So many people have said they want to come back. So I don't know 100%. I just will say, if you're interested in coming to Best Laid Plans Live, I recommend signing up earlier rather than later, assuming that there is a sign-up link in that newsletter, which I think there will be. I don't think we'll be totally sold out, but historically, we've sold out pretty quickly after that. The dates are from November 5th through 7th, and they are once again in Hollywood, Florida at the Diplomat Resort. That's where we did it last year, and it was beautiful. It was honestly like it went off without a hitch, and we really loved the setting. So we got a contract, and we're doing it at the same place. And we're making it a tiny bit, but not significantly bigger than last year to meet demand. So yes, we do anticipate things will sell out. If you're not a newsletter subscriber, now is the time to become one if you're interested in signing up. It's theshoebox.com/newsletter, and you just enter your email address and you'll be signed up, and you should get that newsletter on March the 4th. If you're listening to this and it's after March the 4th, then you can always email me and I can forward you the prior newsletter, but it's better to just be on the list. All right, I'll be back next week with some more planning fun. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope everybody has a wonderful start to the new month. Happy March.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.